At the end of the last section, we finally got some images to show up on our screen. As usual, though, we have a tiny little problem. You might notice that some of the images show a small picture that say, the image you are requesting does not exist or is no longer variable. Well, this is definitely a gotcha on Imgur's side, and we're going to implement a tiny workaround to deal with this. It turns out that when we fetch images out of a topic, we can either be fetching a image, which represents like a distinct single image, or an album of images in which we're given multiple images that kind of belong together or are grouped together. And an image really requires us to do another query to fetch all the additional data. For the purposes of this example, we don't really want to have to deal with any albums whatsoever. So to make our lives just a little bit easier, we're not going to render any of the albums. So we're going to deal with this by filtering out any albums we retrieve inside of our image store. Unfortunately, Imgur's API doesn't have any option for us to filter out any albums on the server side, so we're going to have to do this by hand. So to filter out item entries, or image entries, that are albums, we're going to be using a very popular utility library called Lodash. So at the command line, we will run npm install -- save Lodash, L-O-D-A-S-H. So while that installs, we'll flip back over to our image store, and at the top, we're going to require in Lodash. And by convention, we usually refer to Lodash with an underscore. So rather than saying, var Lodash, we're going to say var underscore, and then we will require in Lodash. Flipping back over to our console, it looks like the install worked just a-okay, so we'll keep trucking on. So like I said, this is a utility library, and it contains a lot of utility functions for just common operations that we really everyday JavaScript challenges. In our case, what we want to do here is we have an array of images, an array of objects, and some of these objects contain a key that is called isAlbum. If isAlbum is true, we want to filter this image out, and we don't want to make use of it at all. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to use a built-in Lodash method called reject, and we access that by saying _.reject. Reject takes two arguments to it. First, an array or object. Actually, I think just an array, excuse me. And a function. So we've got our array of data here, json.data, and a function. Now, the secret to reject is the function gets called with each element out of the array that we pass. So this function will really get a single image. So it's going to be ran however many times equal to the number of images that we have, which might be between 60 or 100. So all we have to do here is say return image.isAlbum. Like I said, every image has the property isAlbum, which is a Boolean value. If isAlbum is true, then the image is an album, and that means we don't want to make use of it inside of our app. We want to filter it out. So the way we're going to do that is by using this reject function. When we return a Boolean from this function, if the Boolean is true, we will reject it from this array of data right here. If the Boolean is false, we will not reject it and we'll retain it. Now it's really important to note that json.data, this array right here, is not modified directly by the reject function. Instead, reject constructs a new array of data and returns it. So basically what we are doing here, or the way that we can kind of sum this up and read it from start to finish, is for every image in json.data, reject any image that is an album. And that's pretty much it. It's a lot of words to describe a fairly simple concept. So let's save this, watch our page refresh, and see if we still get any of those little messages. So I'm scrolling down, and we had one, I believe, right here, and it's just not there anymore, which means we successfully filtered out all the images that were in our document. So that's terrific. Let's get started on some styling to make our image preview look a little bit better. And we're going to do this with some CSS. So we're going to start by going over to imagepreview.jsx, and we're going to add the class name to our root div of image-preview. Next, inside of our Sass folder, we'll create a file image-preview.sass, or excuse me, SCSS. Cool. And then we will write in here image preview, and we'll have one rule for right now. Any image in here should have a height of 200 pixels and a width of 200 pixels. Great. So we'll save this, and if you recall, whenever we create a new SCSS file, we do not automatically get a refresh in here. We need to restart Gulp really quick. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll do our restart, close the old window, and here's our new one. Let's click on funny. And there we go. It takes a second for it to reload, but you'll notice now that we've got all of our images in here, 200 by 200 pixels. Okay, so this is looking a little bit better, but I think we could still do better. So let's change our display in here, display property, from display to display inline block. And it looks like I was kind of expecting that to assemble into a grid. Let's figure out what's going wrong here really quick. My mistake. We need to also put display inline block onto the image preview as well, because they're all wrapped in divs. So let's just do that really quick. We'll save. And there we go. That's what we were looking for. Okay, much better. So all we had to do was add on a display inline block to image preview as well, because image preview itself is a div which has display of block, which means each image was showing up on a new line. Okay, the next thing we'll want to do here is center all of these images on the page. If you notice right now, they're kind of all aligned off to the left, and it'd be really nice to have them kind of centered up on the page. So let's do that by editing our topic file. We'll go to topic.jsx, and inside of our render function, we'll add a class name of just topic. And then we'll create a new file, new SCSS file called topic.scss. We'll say .topic gets the CSS rule text align center. And again, I know this gets irritating, but we'll just restart Gulp really quick. I'll click on funny, and we'll let CSS kick in. There we go. Let's make sure that we've got all of our class names correct on here. Oh, I got one too many S's. My mistake. Let's remove one S. And unfortunately, I probably need to restart Gulp again. Click on funny again. Wait for a refresh. And there we go. All right, so that was a little bit of a arm twister there, but so we've got our topic SCSS file, which just has class topic, gets text align center, and that's just going to align all of the elements that are inside of the topic file. Okay, so I think that we can still do better for the visual on this gallery right here. Let's continue that in the next section.